Okay, welcome back to my Bond retrospective, and this is my second review of the James Bond films. And it's my review of Terence Young's second film as director. Following Dr. No, it's From Russia with Love. It's the second James Bond film, and it's the second film to star Sean Connery as James Bond. So, in my opinion, From Russia with Love is the best film in the series. It has all of the right ingredients. It's got great locations, Venice, Istanbul. It's got great characters, the best villains in the series, I think. And generally, it's just a great film. It's a really intriguing espionage thriller. It's properly, quintessentially British. Dr. No, whilst a very good film, it felt very laid back. You didn't really have to think about it when you were watching it. With From Russia with Love, the plot is more intricate, and it just seems like a more engaging story. There are more fleshed out characters. Just generally, it seems like a more interesting story to watch. And the producers didn't really have an issue trying to decide which film they were going to film to follow up to the hugely successful Dr. No, because President Kennedy in the early 1960s named Ian Fleming's From Russia with Love in his top 10 favourite reads, one of his favourite books that he'd ever read. So, you know, that was a reason, if ever they needed one, to film From Russia with Love as the second James Bond film. So, as I say, the film is quintessentially British. It's in the same kind of vein as the late 50s, early 1960s spy genre films like The Ipcress File in the mid-1960s, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, those kind of films. It was in that kind of vein, which I think is why it seems like the most realistic of the Bond films, certainly of the early films. So if we go right back to the beginning, we have the first pre-title sequence in the series. This tradition has continued throughout the series, but it started here with From Russia with Love. It's a film with many starts. We introduced lots of things that have become formulaic in the James Bond canon since From Russia with Love. And in the pre-title sequence, one of the best in the series, in fact, we have our first glimpse of the film's central villain, played by Robert Shaw so brilliantly, as he's a real enigmatic character. It's Donald Grant, and we're at Spectre Island, which was the grounds of Spectre Island, which was filmed in the grounds of Pinewood Studios, actually, in early 1963. And we see who we assume is Bond, being pursued by Grant, and it's only until Bond is killed, garroted by Grant, that we realise the mask is lifted in true kind of Mission Impossible style, and we discover it's not Tom Cruise, it's a man with a moustache. It's not James Bond. We've been tricked already within the first 2 minutes of the film, so we know it's going to be an exciting film. We're excited by the pre-title sequence, and then we launch into Maurice Binder's second opening credits sequence of the film. The titles over the undulating body of a belly dancer, which, you know, need we say any more? It's pure James Bond. And of course, From Russia with Love is the first film where we see Bond technically dying at the start. So it's the first of the films that plays with our conceptions. Thunderball does the same. We see a coffin with the initials JB at the beginning, which obviously we assume until we see Sean Connery in the frame that James Bond has died. That's what we assume. We also assume that James Bond is killed at the beginning of You Only Live Twice, and to some extent, Die Another Day as well, with Bond actually being tortured through the opening credits sequence. So he's captured and tortured. So technically, he kind of dies a death at the beginning of Die Another Day as well. And James Bond will seemingly die at the beginning of the upcoming Bond film, the 23rd in the series, Skyfall. So, once we've got the pre-title sequence underway, very colourful, semi-naked women, it's all the ingredients, the right ingredients that we expect now from the James Bond series, but were very new at the start of the James Bond series. We have an instrumental of Matt Monroe's From Russia with Love theme as well for the series. Matt Monroe was the first singer to be asked to sing a song for the James Bond films, so he has that privilege there. Um, as I say, it's Maurice Binder's pre-title sequence. It's an instrumental version, like Dr. No, for the opening credits of Matt Monro's song, but Matt Monro's actual song features over the end credits of this film, over From Russia with Love. So let's go on to the characters. Sean Connery is back as James Bond. There's slight anxiety into his portrayal of Bond in Dr. No. Whilst it was very good, you could tell he was a little anxious to make sure he got it right. It was a big gamble, the first film, and due to the success of Dr. No, he obviously felt more confident returning to the role that he's now made famous. So he feels more at home in the role. He's at his peak, I think, in From Russia with Love, and perhaps his coolest as well. He gets some great lines in the film. He really gets the persona of a spy perfectly right as well, I think. He has the right ingredients to play a secret agent. So one of the earliest scenes we see of Sean Connery in the second Bond film is where he is reunited with Eunice Gayson, who plays Sylvia Trench in his introductory scene in Dr. No, and she returns in this film as for a little fling, really, before Bond is summoned in to meet M and sent on his mission. So once again, she's like a precursor Bond girl, if you like, before Bond sets out on his mission. But the central Bond girl is played by former Miss Rome, Daniela Bianchi, who struggled with the English language. She was dubbed by Monica van der Zyl, who is famous within the Bond universe for dubbing a number of the non-English speaking characters. And Daniela Bianchi plays Tatiana Romanova, and she is a pawn in Spectre's plan to steal the Lecter decoding machine. So initially she's working against Bond and trying to get Bond into bed. There's a great scene that's used for that's referred to so many times when they do screen tests for new James Bond actors. They use this scene is where Tatiana seduces Bond into bed. You're one of the most perfect girls I've ever seen. Thank you, but I think my mouth is too big. No, it's the right size for me, that is. So, it's a double entendre heavy, but it's great. So, the Spectre's plan in the film is to steal the Lecter decoding machine from the Russians, which is the MacGuffin of the film. The MacGuffin is a term that was coined by Hitchcock to describe a plot device that is used to draw the narrative onwards. So Tatiana becomes an ally to Bond. She falls in love with him. Another of the key allies in the film is played by Pedro Armendáriz, who plays Kerim Bey, who is Bond's ally when he goes to Turkey, when he goes to Istanbul for his mission. And Pedro Armendáriz very sadly passed away towards the end of the shoot of From Russia with Love, but he managed to film all of his scenes in time before he smuggled a gun into hospital and killed himself because he was dying of cancer. So it's very sad. It really shook the crew on set of the film. But as I say, back to Tatiana, she is very resourceful to Bond. And she actually has a bigger role than Ursula Andress as Honey Rider in Dr. No. This is a bigger Bond girl role, and the roles will gradually get bigger as the series develops. So for the villains, it's the most interesting set of villains in the series. We have Lottie Lenya, who was a former theatrical and cabaret star. She plays the evil Toad-like, according to Fleming's description, straight from the book, Rosa Klebb. So she is defected from Smash, and she is working for Spectre, who are the central villains of the James Bond series, and they're first introduced properly in this film, in From Russia with Love. We also see the outline of Blofeld as well, who is played physically on screen by Anthony Dawson, who portrayed Professor Dent in Dr. No. We only hear his voice, though. It's dubbed by an actor called Eric Pohlman. And Blofeld is Spectre number 1. He will return in many guises throughout the series in a number of the later films. And the man from Spectre who has masterminded the narrative for the film and the plan itself to steal the Lecter machine is Kronstein, played by Vladek Sheval. And he was a former friend of Sean Connery's, and Sean Connery suggested to him that he should play the role. So he did, and he plays it particularly well. There's a great chess scene at the beginning of the film as well that introduces sly tactics of his character very nicely, and he's on the screen too short amount of time, I think, which is a shame. And Walter Gotell plays Morzini as well, who is running Spectre Island. He's a member of Spectre. He will kill Kronstein towards the end of the film, and he will in turn be killed by Bond. Walter Gotell it was his first appearance in a James Bond film, and he returns later in the series as Russian General Gogol, an entirely different character from The Spy Who Loved Me right up to The Living Daylights for a 10-year period of the James Bond films. The central villain, though, in this film is Donald Grant. He's my favourite Bond villain. He plays it so brilliantly. He's in the shadows until the last sort of half an hour of the film, and he almost outsmarts Bond. He's that brilliant. He makes mistakes, ordering red wine with fish on the Orient Express, opening Bond's attaché cases without turning the catches horizontally, and of course, what the standout scene of the film is Peter Hunt's. Peter Hunt edited the scene. It took weeks to edit. It's Bond and Donald Grant and their fight in a carriage of the Orient Express. It's just so stylish. It's so brilliantly filmed. And of course, it's a first for Desmond Llewellyn as playing the quartermaster Q. He only gives Bond the attaché case in this film, so it's not exactly high on gadgetry, but Q will go on to appear in 17 of the Bond films. Desmond Llewellyn certainly playing Q up until The World Is Not Enough, before his very sad real-life death in November 1999. So he's the longest-standing character played by one actor in the series, which personally I don't think will ever be matched again in the series. So perfect locations: Venice, Istanbul. Perfect characters, great villains, Sean Connery on top form. From Russia with Love, to me, is the quintessential James Bond film. If I was told to recommend a Bond that's as close to what Ian Fleming, I feel, would have envisaged when he was writing his novels, then From Russia with Love would be it, I think. So, James Bond will return in Goldfinger. So please do keep watching these reviews. Please comment on the reviews as well on my blog on Film Fanatic, and please let me know what you think of the James Bond series. This is my James Bond retrospective, and James Bond will be back in Goldfinger.